Okay, all right, so let's get into it. So today's session, right, as usual, welcome to ECCM 401, Measuring Customer Satisfaction. And today's session being our 5th session, we are treating questionnaire design, data coding, and entry in SPSS. Now, the questionnaire design is done separately. And once you have designed your questionnaire, while you're collecting your data, you want to go ahead and code the data that you are collecting as captured by your questionnaire in SPSS, so that as you gather the data, you'll be entering it into SPSS until the data collection process is complete and you have an entire data set in SPSS that you can go ahead and use to run subsequent analysis. So today we are going to break down questionnaire design and then learn how to code a questionnaire into SPSS. Please, do we understand?
Yes, madam.
Okay.
Yes,
Now, before you can design a questionnaire, you need to be able to know the variables that you're studying. Remember last week in explaining quantitative research, I taught you about variables and how they relate to each other. Do you remember?
Yes, ma'am.
How many types of variables did I say we have?
Madam, please, 2.
Are you sure? Come back again.
Madam, 4.
Come back again. How many variables do we have? 5 variables, Foster. Thank you. Kindly name them very quickly.
Dependent variable, independent variable, control variable, moderating variables.
Madam.
Yes, who is calling me?
And mediating variables.
Madam, please, it's patience.
Yes, Patience, what's the issue? Abdulhak, hold on. Patience,
Please, you wanted to give a premise before my phone went, my network went off, so I couldn't hear anything. I just have to.
Okay, the premise is what I'm giving. I'm giving the premise now. Yes.
Okay.
So you haven't missed anything.
Okay.
All right, Patience. Thank you. Abdulhak, go ahead. Abdulhak, go ahead. Yes, mention the variables.
Dependent variable, independent, control, moderating, and mediating.
Good. So these are the 5 variables that we have. Now, I said in quantitative research, to be able to collect data, you have to establish some form of relationship between the variables, right? And I said that you do this by means of a statement that we refer to as a what? What statement tells us the relationship between the variables that we can go ahead and test? We said it's called what? It starts with an H. Hypothesis.
Hypothesis.
Good job.
Hypothesis.
So the reason why I gave you the assignment was for you to be able to go ahead and identify variables so that we can hypothesize the relationships between these variables, and then you will use them to create your own questionnaire. Does it make sense?
Yes, please.
Good. So if you did the assignment I gave you well, this questionnaire design lecture should go very smoothly for you. But if not, you may have to go back to the drawing board and identify noteworthy variables that you can put together in good hypothesis and then use to design a questionnaire, which you are ultimately going to use to collect data. So the questionnaire you're going to design, you will upload into Sakai, and that will be graded, right? And then the data you will collect and code into SPSS, that will also be uploaded, and you will be graded for that. Are you with me?
Yes, madam.
Good. So that being said, in this segment, there are 2 learning outcomes that we hope to achieve. The first one being able to design a survey questionnaire for data collection to measure customer satisfaction. And that is why your assignment was to identify variables or factors that influence customer satisfaction. And then the second one is to be able to code the items in the questionnaire designed and enter them into SPSS for subsequent data entry and analysis. Please, are we clear?
Yes, madam.
Awesome. So let's get into it. So we are going to go through what a questionnaire is, what it entails. And then after we do that, we will go through the variables that you identified, and I'll teach you how to use those variables to design a questionnaire. Are we good?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
please.
Good. So let's start. So let's explain what a questionnaire is. All right. So first of all, we need to talk about the fact that based on the premise of our quantitative research lecture we had last week, we know that data for quantitative analysis is typically obtained through questionnaires, right? So we can say that a questionnaire is a tool for collecting information to describe, compare, or explain an event or situation. And in our case, the event or situation we want to explain is customer satisfaction, as well as knowledge, attitudes, behaviors, and or socio-demographic characteristics of a particular target group, which we will also gather in our questionnaire, even though that is not the prime focus of why we are collecting the data, right? And I'll explain that very soon when we come to our practical demonstration. Now, each of the constructs in the research framework, which we are going to create based on the variables we've identified from our assignment, requires the development of a reliable and valid multi-item measurement scale. Now, a multi-item measurement scale refers to the scale that you use to measure your items. And this usually comes in the form of a Likert scale. Please, you know what a Likert scale is? Does anyone know what a Likert scale is?
Yes, ma, but I don't quite.
Who said yes?
Abdul,
okay, so Abdul, based on the basic understanding you have, can you try and explain to us what a Likert scale is?
Like it's used for scaling responses in the survey.
Good, and that is exactly what it is. The Likert scale is a scale that is used for, it's an item or a tool, right? That is used for scaling responses in a survey, right? So these multi-item measurement scales that we are going to put in our questionnaire will be in the form of a Likert scale that will help us scale the responses from our respondents. Now, the responses from our respondents could range from a 5-point Likert scale to a 7-point Likert scale to a 9-point Likert scale. At any point in time, the responses on a Likert scale are odd, right? So if I say the responses or the range of responses on a Likert scale are odd, what does it mean? What does it mean? If I say the number of responses on the scale have to be odd, what does it mean?
Basically, that if there are like two different scales, they shouldn't be equal. One side has to be higher than the other.
I think you're a bit confused now.
The response when divided by 2 shouldn't be visible.
Should give you what?
Divided by 2, odd numbers and numbers are when divided by 2, they are not visible.
Yeah, but I can't hear you. Okay, seems your connection is giving you a bit of trouble. Is there anyone else who wants to attempt? If I say the number of responses have to be odd and not even.
Can I give an example?
Yes, give an example.
Okay, so for instance, if you're asking for the gender, either male, female, or other, it shouldn't be male and female.
Okay, so now you're answering based on your most basic understanding, which I can totally understand. All right, so now that we've gone around in circles, let me bring you home, right? Now, the variable you are talking about, right? Who just spoke? Who just spoke?
Foster.
Foster, good. So Foster, in any questionnaire, we have what we refer to as categorical and continuous variables. They are another classification of variables, right? And
Okay.
categorical variables are usually in categories. So you can't limit them based on even or odd numbers. They are limited based on the number of categories within the construct or the concepts that you are trying to measure. So for instance, a concept like gender that you are talking about, gender has how many categories?
3.
Gender has how many categories? We are in Ghana, we are not in the US.
2.
2.
Good. So gender has 2 categories. And there's no way you can stretch it beyond those 2, true or false?
True.
Good. So in that case, you are limited to those 2 categories, and 2 is an even number, true or false?
True.
Good, right? So that means that it does not qualify in what we are trying to talk about when we refer to a Likert scale. So when we talk about a Likert scale, it is a scale or a tool that is used to measure continuous variables. So continuous variables here are the variables that I made you go and identify in your assignment, including customer satisfaction, loyalty, price, right? Personality, branding, or brand image, right? All of these things can qualify as continuous variables that we can measure on a Likert scale. So when I say a typical Likert scale is odd, it means that the number of points on the scale, right, have to be odd. And it will make sense very soon when I show you an actual questionnaire. So let me quickly go ahead and show you an actual questionnaire. So this is a questionnaire I used to collect data some years back. Let me know if you can see what I'm sharing now. Can you see it?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
So based on what I was explaining to you, Foster, when we are designing a questionnaire, we divide it into 2 sections. The first section that captures background information, which is usually made up of categorical variables, right? So can you see some of the categorical variables we have here? Can we see?
Yes.
So we have what?
Yes.
We have
We
gender.
have gender,
Gender, age, education level,
Good.
occupation,
marital
status,
Good.
online relationship channel.
Good. Right? So these are all categories. And there's no limit to the number of categories you can have, except in the case of a categorical variable like gender that is limited to only the 2 in our context. Right? So here we are not using a Likert scale. We are basically using categories to delineate for each of the categorical variables that we have, how many subcategories there are. But when you talk of a Likert scale, right, a scale ranges from a certain degree of response to another. And when we talk about a scale, we are talking about the fact that it is a balance between the opposite sides of the number line. Are you with me?
Yes, madam.
So when we talk about the number line, we have the positive side and the what?
The negative
The
side.
negative side. And then we have what? The 0, which is in between them. True or false? Good.
True.
So because of that, the Likert scale can never be even, because if it is even, we will not be able to have that midpoint where the 0 is. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Good. So it always has to be an odd number. Either, so what odd numbers can we start from? Starting from 1.
1.
So 1 is the neutral point, right? But we can't only have 1 as the options for our respondents to answer to. So we have to go above 1. So beyond 1, what are the odd points that we have?
3.
3.
3 or what?
5.
5.
5. Another one.
7.
7. Another one.
9.
Good.
9.
And that is where we cap our Likert scale responses. So a Likert scale ranges anywhere from 3 points to 9 points, but that is where we stop. Because anything beyond 9 points becomes cumbersome to work with when you are analyzing data. Please, does it make sense?
Yes, please.
Good.
Yes.
So there are several possible Likert scale responses that you can have. For me, I mostly use the strongly agree, strongly disagree scale. So you can see that in the middle here, we have the neutral. Can you see it?
Yes,
Yeah.
madam.
Then on the negative side, we have what?
Strongly
Strongly
disagree, disagree.
Good. And then on the positive side, we have what?
Agree, strongly agree.
Good. Now, remember I used the reference of the number line when I was talking about the Likert scale.
Yes.
Good. So the Likert scale mimics the number line in terms of range of responses. Now, you see when you draw the number line, on the immediate right of 0, we have the positive side, which starts from what?
1.
1.
And the further you go to the right, the bigger the numbers become. True or false?
True.
Good. So on the immediate right of neutral, we have what? Agree. And then as we go further to the right of agree, we have what?
Strongly agree.
Good. So just like the number line, the closer we move to the right, the stronger the responses become. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Good. And then on the left, the further we move to the left, the weaker the responses become. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So on the immediate left, we have what?
Disagree.
Good. And strongly disagree. Right? So basically, that is the concept of the Likert scale and how it looks. Are we all here?
Yes, madam.
Okay. So like I mentioned, these multi-item measurement scales are placed in the questionnaire and administered to the research sample. So if we are administering our questionnaire, the sample that we are going to be administering this questionnaire to will be responding along the lines of this Likert scale based on how much they agree or disagree to the statements that we have made. So you could see from the questionnaire that there were individual statements measuring each of the variables. Can we see that? Can we see that? There are individual statements measuring each variable. Do you see?
Yeah.
Yes, please. So these are the multi-item measurement scales we are talking about. These are the items. And they are in multiples. That's why we call it a multi-item measurement scale. So there are different individual items, each one being measured on the Likert scale that we just discussed. Please, are we okay?
Yes, madam.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, madam.
Now, when we talk about Likert scales, we can have several ranges of responses. Strongly agree to strongly disagree is just one of them, right? There are so many others. Let me see if I can quickly show you one. Now, depending on the objectives of your study and what you hope to achieve, you should be able to pick the correct scale that adequately measures the variable that you are trying to measure for your research. So you don't just pick the scales for fun, or you don't just pick the format for fun. You pick it based on what your objectives are and what you hope to achieve by the end of the study, right? So let's look at examples of Likert scale responses. All right, I'm sharing a screen now. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, madam.
Okay, so let's start from here. We already know the strongly agree, strongly disagree one, right? So let's start from this one. Look at the meaning from the meaning in life questionnaire. They are taking it from another questionnaire, right? But this is how many points on the scale?
7.
7. Good. So for instance, let's say one of the statements we want to measure under customer satisfaction is, I am satisfied with the service that my service provider gives. They will answer based on how they feel this statement is true, right? So the range of responses here capture how true the statement is or how untrue it is. Are you with me?
Yes, madam.
Good. So I'm going to do a pop quiz right now. Looking at this response scale right here, how many points does it have?
7.
7. Good. Now, on the positive side, what are the responses there? One person should tell us the responses on the positive side.
Somewhat true. Mostly true. Absolutely true.
Good. And it is again mimicking the number line, right? Because the
Yes,
further we
please.
move towards the positive side, the stronger the response becomes.
Stronger.
Good. Where is the neutral point?
4. Question 4.
Which is?
Can't say true or false.
Good. And then what's the negative side?
Somewhat untrue. Mostly untrue. Absolutely untrue.
Good. So now you get the concept of the Likert scale that I was talking about.
Yes, madam.
Awesome. And there are several other possible responses that you can use. In your free time, you can go ahead and look out various response skills to give you an idea of how far you can stretch the response options, right? Let's look at this particular response that has to do with satisfaction. How many points does it have?
5.
5.
Good.
5.
Okay. So how many responses are on the positive side? Name them.
Satisfied. Highly satisfied.
Good. And then the neutral point says what?
Neutral.
Good. And then the negative side?
Dissatisfied. Highly dissatisfied.
Good. Now the same satisfaction scale, let's look at it in a 7-point scale format. What is the neutral point here?
Neither satisfied or dissatisfied.
Good. And then the positive side says what?
Somewhat satisfied, mostly satisfied, completely satisfied.
Good. And then the negative side?
Somewhat dissatisfied, mostly dissatisfied, completely dissatisfied.
Awesome. So you see how your Likert scale responses can range, right?
Yes, madam.
You can put it on a 5-point, a 7-point, and like I said, you can go as high as a 9 points. But 9 points is where we cap it. But the most popular ones we use are the 5 points and the 7 points. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, madam.
Good. So let's go back to our presentation. So that means when you are developing your questionnaire, you have the option of either using a 7-point or 5-point scale. Now, whichever set of options you choose, you have to be consistent with throughout. Are you with me?
Yes, madam.
You can't mix them up. Because when you mix them up, the software will have it difficult trying to understand the system that you have used, and it might affect the output of your analysis. So if you choose a 5-point scale, you have to use that consistently throughout. And then if you choose a 7-point scale, you have to use it consistently throughout. This doesn't make sense.
Yes, madam.
That is why in the questionnaire that I shared with you, right? Let's quickly look at that. In the questionnaire that I shared with you, you can see that all the responses are on what scale?
5-point scale.
5 points. All of them are 5 points. Because I want to be able to establish a standard measurement format so that when I enter it into the SPSS software, it will be able to give me a standardized, consistent output. All right. So let's move on with our discussion. Before we do, does anyone have anything they want to ask or anything they need clarification on? First, I hope it is clear now. Now you understand the difference between the categorical and the continuous variables and which ones are measured on the Likert scale.
Yes, please.
Good. All right. So there's no other question. Everyone is okay?
Yes, madam.
All right, then let's proceed. So now we've understood the concept of the multi-item measurement scale. And we've understood how to do the multi-item measurement skills using the Likert scale. So let's look at the characteristics of a good questionnaire very quickly. Good questionnaires are difficult to construct. You can see the questionnaire I shared with you has gone through a lot of painstaking design because you have to make sure that it is designed in a manner that will make it easy for you to get good data to analyze, to address your research objectives. So good questionnaires are difficult to construct, but they are easy to analyze. So you work today and you enjoy tomorrow. That's basically what it is. This doesn't make sense.
Yes,
Yes,
madam.
So that being said, if you design a terrible questionnaire, you will get bad data. And in quantitative data analysis, we have what we refer to as the GIGO effect. GIGO here being the acronym GIGO, standing for garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage out.
Good, that's the GIGO effect. So if you do not put in good data into your software, you can analyze all right, but all the outputs that you come out with will not be worth relying on. So good questionnaires are difficult to construct. You need to know that and make sure you put in the work to design a good questionnaire so that you can be able to get good data that will be easy to analyze. Now, good questionnaires are also formulated from research hypotheses that have been carefully formulated from existing literature. I take this one again. Good questionnaires are formulated from research hypotheses that have been carefully formulated from existing literature. And that is why I asked you to go to the literature to identify variables that we can use to formulate hypotheses to measure customer satisfaction. Does it make sense now?
Yes, please.
Good. So you can't just get up and manufacture constructs of variables out of nowhere. You have to consult existing literature on the topic that you are trying to do your research on and pick variables from there to be able to create your questionnaire. Again, good questionnaires ask clearly defined questions and they communicate your research intentions to your respondents. So if you give your questionnaire to your respondents and they have to come back to you every 2 seconds to ask you for clarification on something that has been put in the questionnaire, then it means you didn't do a good job of designing it. Please, does it make sense?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Also, you need to make sure that your respondents can fully understand the questions that you have provided. Because the respondent, bear in mind, is doing you a favor by volunteering to respond to your questionnaire, which most of the time is the case, right? Because for ethical reasons, you can't influence the respondent by bribing them or paying them to respond to your questionnaire. So they are doing it voluntarily. So if they find it difficult or are unable to understand the questionnaire they are answering, they are less likely to want to answer it and they may refuse. Or to make it easier for themselves, even if they don't understand, they'll just give you any answer, which will end up giving you lies and will not accurately give you a reflection of the variables as they pertain to your respondents. So you have to make sure that the questionnaire is designed in a manner that your respondents can fully understand. And at the same time, too, you must make sure that the questions in the questionnaire are assembled in a logical, clear manner that flows naturally so that it will not be difficult for the respondent to follow through on the thought process that went into the questionnaire and how they are expected to answer each of the questions in there, right? So let's look at questionnaire administration formats. There are several formats in which you can administer your questionnaire, right? You can use self-administered, where you do it by mail or personal contact. So self-administration here means that you leave the respondent alone to fill in the questionnaire themselves. So you can mail it to them and tell them to fill it and then mail it back to you. Or you can physically take the questionnaire to them and tell them to fill it and then you take it back. Now with in-person face-to-face administration, here you are not allowing the respondents to answer the questionnaire themselves, but you are sitting there with them face-to-face and you ask them question by question. They tell you their response and then you fill it there and then in front of them. Does it make sense?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Good. And then we have telephone interviews where you call your respondent on the phone and then you put a questionnaire down and you ask them each of the questions one by one on phone. And then they give you their answer and then you take it. That's telephone interview. And then online survey, which has become very popular in our time because of COVID. It's where you design something like a Google form. or you use a software like SurveyMonkey, and you load your survey in it, it generates a link for you, and then you share it among your respondents, and then they go to the link and they respond to the survey. Now that one is a bit straightforward for us quantitative researchers, because once we are able to do so, it basically collates all the data in one place. And once the data collection is completed, you can export it either to SPSS or to Excel for further analysis. Please, does it make sense?
Yes, please.
Good.
Yes.
So those are the various formats for administering a questionnaire. So in the questionnaire design process, how do we go about it? First, we need to define the aims of the study and the information that we require. Now, this is very important because if you don't know the information that you are looking for, you will not be able to know which variables will be relevant to your study. Please, does it make sense?
Yes, please.
Good.
Yes.
So you need to define the aims of your study. And here, what is the aim of the study that we are conducting? What's the general aim of the study that we are conducting?
Customer
Measure
satisfaction.
customer satisfaction.
It's not measuring customer satisfaction. It's more specific than that. What specifically are we trying to do? I mentioned it last week.
To analyze and
Are you sure that's what we are trying to do? Are you sure that's what we are trying to do? Then why did I send you in search of variables that influence customer satisfaction? So based on what I just said, what is the aim of our study? Or the objective of our study? What is it?
Madam, to analyze, make a survey, and to be able to derive or measure customer satisfaction.
That's close. Right. So generally, the aim of our study is to identify the factors that influence what?
Customer satisfaction.
Customer satisfaction.
Exactly. And that's the main aim of our study. So I want you to write this down. So research objective is to identify the factors that influence customer satisfaction. And I'm asking you to write it down because we are going to use it in designing our questionnaire in the next few moments. Have you written it down?
Yes,
please.
madam.
Good. So once we have been able to define the aim of our study, what next do we have to do? We have to review the current literature to identify already validated questionnaires that measure our specific variables of interest. So as part of this stage, we are going to look for our variables of interest, right? And then we will look out for literature that have already used these variables and have developed questionnaires to measure them so that we can get measurement skills from there. Are you with me?
Yes, madam.
Good. So I'm going to go to the assignments that I gave you right now. And we are going to look at the variables that some of you identified.